Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beyond the Barbell podcast. We are holding our mic because I feel like it sits too low. So this is going to be interesting. But this week's episode on the podcast for any female listeners, and honestly, even if there are male listeners, you may know someone that needs to hear this episode. So, as women, we've been taught to chalk most things up we experience as often normal. It's just your PMS, the mood swings, the brain fog, exhaustion, feeling like a completely different person or version of yourself for half of the month. And we haven't really got any answers, right? Beyond it's PMS, it's normal, you're a woman, blah, 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 right? In this episode, I'm talking with Jes Fleming. She is a yoga teacher, a women's wellness educator, and she specializes in PMDD. If you are anything like me, what you are probably like, what the hell is PMDD? So, something that I've learned way too many women are dealing with, and or potentially just don't even know that this exists. So, in this episode, we're going to break down what it is, why it's not just PMS. There is some stark differences that Jes explains to us. Very clear to at least start to bring some awareness to them. How it can mimic burnout, depression, anxiety, and what's really going on with your hormones and some key things in your life and lifestyle that you may be doing or experiencing that could be contributing and making this worse, and why it's so common amongst high achieving women. I know you are all out there. I am one of you. So give it a listen. I'm really excited for you guys to just hear this conversation. And if you are experiencing anything that we discuss, hopefully this is the catalyst to you starting to feel better. Or, like I said, sharing with someone that you know needs to hear this episode and ultimately get the help that they may need. So if you ever just don't feel like yourself anymore, or again, you know someone that may be in this situation, this episode is for you. And I hope you enjoy it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beyond the Barbell podcast. I am here with Jes Fleming, PMDD specialist. So, hi, Jes. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to have this conversation today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do? Because I have a feeling this is probably a new term for a lot of listeners today.
Yeah. Well, hi, Ashley. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to talk about PMDD. PMDD actually stands for premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and it is a cyclical reproductive mood disorder that is caused by a sensitivity. It's believed to be caused by a sensitivity in the brain to the normal fluctuations of sex hormones across the menstrual cycle. So it's most commonly described as like PMS on steroids. And I think that that's okay. That's a good way for people to understand what we're talking about here, but it is very different than PMS. So we'll make those distinctions. But yeah, that's what I'm up to 24/7, helping women reduce their hormonal moods and get their lives back, because these symptoms are so debilitating. And I think a lot of us have just pushed through and thought like, oh, this is normal. Everyone's dealing with this and I'm just not trying hard enough. Or lots of misconceptions around what's a normal and healthy menstrual cycle and what's falling outside of the category of that.
Yeah, definitely. I work with predominantly females, so I'm really excited to have this conversation because, everyone's cycles are obviously happening at all different points during the month, but, every time when we do check-ins, just like what you said, a lot of the symptoms and things that people are going through, it is just kind of chalked up as like, well, this is just, this is the norm and this is just like how it is and you'll be fine in 7 days type of thing. So I'm really excited to just get your perspective and learn more, because this is a relatively new term for me as well. And when I came across your Instagram and your material, I was like, okay, I need to learn more, and I want my listeners to learn more. So really excited to have you here. So tell us, like, what exactly sparked, Like, how did you end up in this field? How did you end up working with women with PMDD?
Mhm. Yeah, not by choice necessarily. I lived with undiagnosed and misdiagnosed PMDD for 17 years, and PMDD is most commonly misdiagnosed as bipolar disorder. So as a teenager, I was actually
Oh.
diagnosed and treated with bipolar disorder. And, 10 plus years later, I found out it's actually something completely different.
Wow.
And it was brutal. One of the major symptoms and risks of PMDD is suicidal ideation. And we see in the recent research 34% of women with PMDD actually attempting suicide. So heavy conversation here, but I
Wow,
think
that's
it's a really
scary.
important thing to share. The quality of life that you experience with this when it's undiagnosed and misdiagnosed for so long is very low. It impacts every aspect of your life, from how you think and feel about yourself to how you're able to perform in your job, to be a parent, to be a sister, a daughter, a student, any of those things. It's 2 weeks or more of you feeling like your body has been hijacked by something else, something much darker. And some of my
Yeah.
clients like say demonic or something like that. Like it feels like a monster has taken over. And
Yeah.
it just, you switch between feeling like yourself and this other version of yourself and losing control. And while PMDD does include physical symptoms, it's often the psychological symptoms that women are really at their wits' end with. It's amazing, and I'm sure you see this with your clients. It's amazing the amount of suffering women will endure, whether it be physical or psychological. But there's a
Oh, yeah.
limit when these symptoms really start impacting your family, your ability to work towards your goals, your ability to function in daily life, where we have to start to draw the line and say, like, enough is enough and we have to change this. And so I hit a rock bottom point in 2017. This was before I knew what PMDD was, still 17 years in to surviving with this. And it really was like I lost someone that I loved, like they would no longer be in relationship with me because of my behavior. Same with a best friend. So a partner, a best friend, a job, got fired from, and lost my housing in the process. So
Wow.
really, like, and all of those things had happened over and over and over. So it was really a culmination, and then them all happening at once, where it was just like, okay, I'm opting out of this life because this is not living, or I have to find a different way forward. And I'm so grateful every day that I kept trying and I didn't give up, because my life is completely unrecognizable now that I've learned to reduce and manage my symptoms. But it
Wow.
was 2017, and you'll remember this, Ashley. It was the like big menstrual cycle revolution, and Lisa Henderson Jack's book came out, and Elisa Vitti came out with her cycle syncing method. And I started learning for the first time, like, oh, my mom's been taking me to the doctor for years, since I was 13 or 14, like saying, this is not normal PMS. Like, I have a period. This is not normal.
Yeah.
And really getting nowhere. And the experience is so consuming. Like I'm sure you've been in points in your life where there's been a loss or like a tragedy, and you get so consumed by the grief and the emotion of that experience that like you can't really see clearly, like time stops. That's what the PMDD
Yeah.
experience is like. And so even though my
Wow.
mom she would literally be on the phone with me, like talking me off ledges, like, you're going to get your period. It's okay. Like, don't quit college. Don't do anything right now. Like, it's coming
Yeah.
and you're going to feel better. I couldn't quite put it together. Like, it would just consume me, and I would be there and then I would be out of it. And so that was when it clicked. It was like, oh, this is related to my menstrual cycle. Oh, I actually don't really know anything about my menstrual cycle. And I started learning. And through that process, I had my first symptom-free period in 3 months after
Wow.
implementing some lifestyle and diet changes and some education. And it was,
That's huge.
yeah, it was crazy. And it was also so painful, because at that moment it was a real, like, time stopped, and I was like, this is how people my age have doctorate degrees, are married, own homes, have careers, and I can't get out of bed for 2 weeks out of every month. Like, this
Yeah.
is why. And so it was kind of a trauma response, I think, in the moment of just like, I'm going to help people with this. Because if I can help one woman even get back one day of her life from this degree of suffering with what I've learned already, then somehow all the things that I lost will have some purpose in the end.
Yeah.
And it really has become so much more than that. But yeah, long story short, that's how I got here.
No, thank you for sharing that. And sorry, that's like you had to go through a lot, but like you said, it's a lot of times I find as a coach myself and talking with other coaches, like you end up helping people that are similar, like your past self almost, right? Like your client becomes your past self. So like it makes a lot of sense, that full circle thing that you were describing is like, you want to help other people now that you know what you know, get to where you got a hell of a lot sooner, right? We don't want to take the, decade plus that it took you, but I feel like that is the unfortunate but fortunate journey of a lot of coaches in all different spaces. So that's really, really cool to hear that, and just like the work that you are doing now. And it's so important because like you said, this is, 2 weeks, a month is it's a big chunk of time to be like not feeling like yourself and not being able to do like quote unquote normal day-to-day living. And like that's, and the 2 weeks that you do feel good, like we know, like even when your menstrual cycle is quote unquote normal, like it goes so quick. It's like, I just had my period, like what, it's already back again, so it's like, yeah, super important to be doing the work that you're doing. But so can you, obviously, like you mentioned, there is a stark difference between PMDD and PMS, but oftentimes they're very easily misdiagnosed. Like you said, maybe this is bipolar or you just have really severe PMS symptoms. So what are some like stark differences between the two that maybe our listeners, I don't want to obviously make everyone listening paranoid and be like, oh my God, but just to make everyone aware of like, okay, these are some of the things that are going on, and maybe some things to be really aware of, and maybe start to ask questions about if you're experiencing some of these things.
Yeah. So first I'll say that PMDD in 2013 was added into the DSM. So it became a mental health condition. It moved from being more of a medical condition to a mental health condition. And now it's really falling in the gap because gynecology and mental health, right? And there's not a field there. So what happens is women are getting pinged back and forth, go see a counselor, go see your gynecologist, and so on.
Okay.
So that's a problem. And then your gynecologist is a surgeon, right? Their job is really not like as rooted in the menstrual cycle as you would think. They have less knowledge than you would think. I do hope that that's getting better and see some signs of that, but that's the reality. And then within the mental health field, it's like this is also related to the physiological function in your body. So if you're just looking at the mental health aspect, you're missing a lot of pieces, a lot of nutrient deficiency. If there is hormone imbalance, even if it's not in sex hormones, extremely common, all sorts of things that can be driving these symptoms to be worse. So I want to first say, like, PMDD is just a list of symptoms. It doesn't tell you anything about why you have them, what's going on. And it's the same with PMS. So PMDD is considered a diagnosis through exclusion. So what your provider should be doing is running a lot of tests and ruling out other things that could be leading to these symptoms. Now, I don't see that happening in my client population, which is very disturbing. Yeah.
I recently just went to the gynecologist, and even just getting, not to go off on a tangent, but even just like getting blood work I had a baby about 18 months ago, right? So just like wanting to check in on my hormones and just like see where we are at after that whole experience. And it was like pulling teeth. And the most recent doctor that I saw, and it was like someone new in my practice, she asked me if I wanted to go on birth control probably about 10 times in like the 15-minute visit. And I like very early on made it clear that I didn't want to do that. And it became like any question I asked, the Band-Aid was just like, go on birth control, go on birth control. And so anyway, it's very sad. But
and this is where that education is so key, because what happens with these women, and even happening to you, right? Like you're going in there, you're looking for support, and you come out feeling hopeless because you're not being heard, and you're not being offered any other options. And when it comes to PMDD, it's the same as with any other women's health condition. You can take birth control or you can take an antidepressant. Those are the first and second line treatments for PMDD. And again, neither of them, while they can be life-saving, both of them for many at certain points, neither of them are addressing any of the underlying reasons why you're having these symptoms. So to get to those distinctions between PMS and PMDD, I see 4 that are key. One is the cause. So PMS is very common. It's not really even pathologized anymore. It's more of just like a haha, butt of a joke type of thing. We all know about it. And PMS is most commonly going to be caused from hormone imbalance. And that can be sex hormones, that can be your stress hormones impacting your sex hormones, right? It's a cascade. So rarely do you just end up with sex hormone dysfunction. There's a lot of things that come before that. But PMS would fall into like the hormone imbalance category, where PMDD is believed to be a sensitivity to the fluctuating hormones across the menstrual cycle. So it's a brain sensitivity. So almost like you're allergic to the fluctuation of those hormones. And then you can test the hormones, and there's a lot of nuance and things we could like nerd out on here, but the hormone like ranges are very wide. And so you could still be falling within normal ranges for whichever cycle phase you're testing in, and still be having these severe symptoms. And so this is where they started to identify factors, neurobiological factors that are showing there's more to this than just a sex hormone imbalance or a hormone imbalance. That said, it's often a piece of the puzzle still for PMDD. Nutrient deficiencies, right? Like all of these things overlap, but there's a little bit more complexity that we're seeing in the research with the cause of PMDD versus PMS. So hormonal, neurobiological sensitivity. The second key distinction is going to be the duration that the symptoms are lasting. So PMS symptoms are usually lasting 3 to 5 days before you get your period, whereas PMDD symptoms, most commonly I see in my practice at least, onset around ovulation and then last, up until you bleed, or maybe they don't resolve until you're a couple days into your period. So from 3 to 5 days with PMS, 10, 14, 16 days, depending on the symptom pattern with PMDD. Yeah. The third distinction is the impact that those symptoms are going to have. So if you have mild to moderate symptoms, PMS symptoms for 3 to 5 days, that's very different than having moderate to severe symptoms for 10 to 16 days. And so the impact over our lifetime is much more serious with, if you did the math, and you broke it down, some of the research is showing like 8 or more years of your menstruating lifetime, you are in a debilitated state when you add all of that up. And so really massively impacting your work performance, your relationships, your ability to work towards your goals, all of those things. So the third distinction is the severity ultimately, and the impact that severity is going to have. And then the last distinction that I'll make is the prevalence. So it's estimated that 75 to 90% of women experience PMS at some point in their reproductive years. But only 3 to 8% is the statistic are experiencing PMDD. Now, I think that that's probably grossly underestimated, because so many women are misdiagnosed or suffering in silence. So I do think it's more than that, but it's not 75 to 90% like with PMS.
Yeah.
So that prevalence is the fourth key distinction.
Okay. Well, hopefully through these conversations, like you said, women will feel more comfortable talking about these things and wanting to get answers. I find like similar statistics too with just like miscarriages and things like that. And I don't know off the top of my head what it is, but it's like, I'm sure severely underrepresented because, once you start talking to people, you realize that like it's way more common than you think. And I think people are becoming more and more comfortable talking about something like that. But it's, like you said, there's a lot of suffering in silence when it comes to anything that a lot of like us as females go through. So hopefully people like you will start to change that and people will feel more comfortable and get the help that they need. Okay. So let's see, we talked about the symptoms. So what, obviously being someone that has it and was misdiagnosed for so long and kind of going through your whole journey and now hearing about some of the symptoms, why do you think, is it just lack of knowledge? You feel like a lot of women don't realize they have it and it's because like they're just told this is normal, and because they don't see some of those like the four differences you kind of just explained to us, like there's just not enough knowledge out there? Like what would you say is the biggest thing kind of keeping women in the dark, I guess?
I think fundamentally it is a lack of reproductive health education, not only on just regular women, but also on the medical establishment. I think that it's kind of two-part, right? Like we're always our own advocate for our health. And so that education is going to help us advocate more. But there's also a lot of women who are going in and saying, hey, I don't know, like I'm not feeling right. And maybe they haven't connected it to their menstrual cycle. So there's a lot of awareness gaps where, like I said, you get so consumed by this that you might not see the pattern, but eventually those closest to you do start to see a pattern. And so there's that. But I think, a lot of women are going in and saying like, I'm depressed or I'm really moody. And they're being sent to the psychiatric area or counseling area, and they're not getting screened for that mind body connection, what's happening in the body that's impacting the mind. And then I just think like the medical dismissal is huge. I mean, I can't tell you, and I'm sure you've experienced this. Oh, it's just part of being a woman. Oh, you'll grow out of it. Oh, it's just hormones, this kind of downplaying of the severity, which is really just showing, we're not being heard. And I think overall, there's a normalization in suffering for women with period symptoms or any symptoms. Like I said, even if they're not connecting it to their menstrual cycle, there's so much stigma around like, oh, so-and-so's on their period or she's PMSing, and it's just kind of like, it's downplayed. And that's when I had that first symptom-free period, that was where so much of the grief came from, because I had thought that everyone was experiencing this and I just wasn't trying hard enough. I just wasn't as good at working through it. I didn't realize that, oh yeah, people aren't becoming extremely hopeless before their period for multiple weeks on end and like unable to function, So, and then that, like I said, that cyclical pattern goes unrecognized a lot of times, the health provider knowledge gaps, the diagnostic complexity where still, this is why I think what we're doing here at Her Mood Mentor is so impactful, because even still, right, I have to go to the gynecologist. I have to work through health challenges that I'm having. And it's just so surprising to see the lack of complexity in their processes. Like, yeah, maybe they'll run tests, but maybe not. Maybe they'll ask you some questions about how your lifestyle and diet could be playing a role. Probably not, right? There's just, here's the pill. Here's the pill for the thing. Yeah. Yep. And then the underestimated prevalence, again, lack of education, and just like medical bias around hormone related health concerns that have like historically been minimized and continue to be, and seen as like a psychological weakness rather than recognized as a legitimate medical condition that requires treatment and testing and education and advocacy and all of those things. So it's a lot. which
Yeah,
I think
definitely is.
like that makes me feel better when you ask that question of like why are there so many women suffering and they don't know that they have it? Like it was painful for me to answer that, but as I was fleshing out the answer, it was like, oh, there's a lot of reasons, and that makes me feel a little bit better. And I hope it makes your
Yeah.
listeners feel a little bit better if they can relate to what we're talking about, because it's not simple.
Yeah. And exactly, and not to make anyone feel like any type of way if they are listening and realizing like, oh shoot, like I have some of these things that Jess is describing. It's like we said earlier, it, it's a lot more common in a lot of ways than we may realize, and like there's probably people that you may already know that are kind of also going through some of these same things, and like sometimes it just takes one brave person like you sharing your story to then trigger other people to ask the questions excuse me, or seek out the support, or just get curious about what's going on. Because you're right, when you go to the doctor, it excuse me, I have a weird tickle in my throat.
Hmm.
There's not a lot of questions asked. I even think about my discharge from very timely right now that I like can't talk randomly.
Oh.
um okay, I think it's gone. When I was discharged from the hospital after having the baby and you go in for your checkup, and this made me think about how they screen you for postpartum depression, and it's literally like a 10-question questionnaire, and like some of the questions on there, it's like you're in the newborn fog, so it's like of course you're tired and sleep deprived, and like it's such an outdated, antiquated thing, and it's like I can only imagine how many women kind of slip through the cracks in these, all these types, like you said, like everything that is like that has to do with the female reproductive system in years of our lives, like how often in so many different areas we as women are kind of just misdiagnosed, misrepresented, underrepresented in all stages. And it's up until recently, having kind of gone through obviously the entire process myself, I was like, holy shit, thank God I have some knowledge. And I, went and did like a pre and postnatal certification. And like when it comes to exercise and nutrition, like you said, like no one is asking about any of that stuff. And like, yeah, sometimes obviously there is other, and I want to talk about like what we can do next of like to help with these symptoms, but like our stress management, our nutrition, our daily movement, like yes, obviously not going to fix every single thing, but a lot of times like you said, there is definitely a deep connection between a lot of things that we are experiencing inside our bodies to those things. Yet when you go to the doctor, none of those things are taken into consideration, at least in my experience and all the years and times that I've gone to the doctor. I actually, my gynecologist, when she found out what I did for a living, she was like, oh, you know more than me, so like just keep doing your thing. And I was like, cool, well, like, yeah, I'm fortunate that maybe I do, but like how about the other hundreds and thousands of women having babies that just get no support on diet and exercise through, one of the most important times in their lives when they should really be focusing on that stuff, because it isn't just about them, it's about them and the baby. So it's just like, it's so crazy. And hopefully, like you said, it is starting to improve, but I think we probably have a really, really long way to go, unfortunately, when it comes to all of that stuff. So tell us a little bit about, you mentioned when you finally had your first symptom-free menstrual cycle, like what are some of the things that you were, and I know everyone will be a little bit different obviously, but what are some of the, like the lifestyle and nutritional kind of like discoveries or things that you were, the protocols, I guess, if you will, that you found to be really helpful with the symptoms in particular?
So before I share those, would it be helpful for me to list out some of the symptoms that you might experience with PMDD that are within the
Yeah,
diagnostic criteria? Because
definitely.
the the actions that we take are going to be related to different specific symptoms. And also some of the testing that we do is going to be related to the symptom presentation and pattern that each individual is experiencing. So I'm just going to list through the DSM diagnostic criteria for PMDD. So rapid and unpredictable mood changes. That's where that bipolar misdiagnosis comes in. Irritability, anger, rage that leads to increased interpersonal conflict, major. Depressed mood, hopelessness, self-deprecating, a lot of negative self-talk, a lot of self-sabotaging behaviors, marked anxiety and tension in the body, decreased interest in usual activities, difficulty concentrating, lethargy, severe fatigue, lack of energy is something we very commonly see. Changes in your appetite, whether it be having no appetite or cravings, binging, sleep problems, whether that be insomnia or hypersomnia, can't sleep or sleeping too much, and feeling out of control is a major symptom that we see as well. There are other symptoms like paranoia and things like that that can come in. Disassociation are common, but there's also physical symptoms. So bloating, weight gain, breast tenderness and swelling, joint and muscle pain is very common. So that's kind of what we're talking about. And as you're listening to that, you're like, oh yeah, some of those are PMS symptoms, but here we're talking more severe, lasting longer, impacting your ability to function normally in your daily life. So, and then the timing, that pattern. So these symptoms are only happening somewhere around ovulation to menstruation. So it's a cyclical pattern is how you get the diagnosis. And then when it comes to things that are going to help, I always start all of our students and clients with a process called symptom mapping. And this is a free resource that we have and we offer to everyone who's curious about learning more about their emotional patterns that go along with their cycle or any symptoms that go along. And it's really a process where you're going in and you're recording were your symptoms mild, moderate, or severe, and you're doing that across the month, but it's creating a visual format. So a lot of times we're recording stuff in our apps or whatever, but we don't get to see that visual pattern across the cycle. And that's so empowering because you can see not only when are the symptoms starting, how severe are they, you can start to understand some triggers behind the symptoms. Once you understand the pattern, not only can you get a diagnosis should you seek that out, you also can advocate for yourself, ask for help during those times, change your schedule a little bit to, facilitate more space and recovery during the luteal phase of the cycle. So the symptom mapping process is key. You have to build awareness before you can change anything. And I'm sure that's something you work on with your clients.
Yes.
Right?
That is, if any of them are listening, they're like, oh, okay, this sounds familiar.
Yeah.
There's always a discovery awareness phase. That's honestly step one in behavior change, in my opinion.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we start there with that awareness stage. And then the second stage that I think is really important, again, when we're looking at change, we have to have awareness. Then we have to have understanding. And I think in order to have that understanding, you just need some basic reproductive health education. Like none of us have received that. Yeah. So you have to seek that out. You have to invest the time, energy, money, whatever it takes to learn more about your menstrual cycle, your hormones, your anatomy, what's happening, how do you support it. So that's falling in that understanding phase. And then also in the understanding phase, I think another important thing to do, as I said before, is lab testing. And, I work in the integrative medicine realm, so I'm offering a lot of lab tests that your doctor has never even heard of, very specialized tests, but even blood tests, basic blood tests can give us a lot of information to get started. What I will say is if you're getting blood tests and you're being told everything's fine and normal and you're not feeling fine and normal, it's important to know that within conventional medicine, they are diagnosing and treating disease. That is their scope of practice. And so they use wider lab ranges because they're looking to diagnose and treat disease. Whereas someone in integrative medicine, that's out of my scope. I'm not going to diagnose and treat you, right? I'm going to help you optimize your life, learn how to reduce and manage these symptoms. So I use much narrower lab ranges to see what's out of the optimal health range. And like yesterday, I did a blood lab review with one of my clients. Her results come in, like 3 are out of range by conventional standards. We run them through my integrative medicine ranges, and over 15 are out of optimal range. Wow. So we're getting a lot clearer picture on some of these things. And depending on what what's out of range, it's going to have a huge impact when we're looking at insulin, glucose levels. Like those are massively going to be impacting your mood, your energy levels. So yeah, maybe you don't have diabetes or pre-diabetes, but like you're being affected by this being out of optimal range, for one tiny example. So lab testing. I think oftentimes we feel like, oh, I have a problem. And I'm so like this, and I've been like this forever, but like, I have a problem, take action, right? I realize that, this PMDD thing might be something that I'm doing, take action. But that awareness and understanding phase are really key for you to take action that's actually going to move the needle. What I don't want anyone to do is to take action and then not get the result they want and then reaffirm their hopelessness. And I did that. I know a lot of people listening are doing that, maybe not in this context, but in other contexts. But you have to have the understanding that like, hey, there's more to the story. Like you can figure this out. Like you're just missing some of those pieces to the puzzle.
And it's going to take time.
Yeah, it takes time.
Probably, I would imagine in your line of work, much like mine, is like you don't always get it right the first time either.
Yeah.
You may try something, and after, whatever the protocol is for you and what you do, like several weeks time, and you're like, okay, this didn't have the desired outcome we were anticipating. We need to go back to the drawing board versus, like you said, just giving up and being like, well, this is my destiny and I'm just stuck here.
Yeah. And I totally empathize with that because it's hard. It's hard to do these things. It's hard to figure it out. It's hard to do it on your own. But ultimately the gift on the other side is that you are the only person who can change your health, and you're the only person who lives in your body. So that barrier is definitely there. But on the other side of that barrier is so much more trust for yourself, so much more understanding of how to care for yourself, to advocate for yourself. Like, it is worth it, let me tell you, to get the support you need to be able to do these steps. And don't get the support you need. Like, don't do it on your own too. Like, don't think you have to figure this out on your own, because it is hard, but it's so worth it. My parents look at me and they're just like, who are you? Like, you're a completely different person, like, than I was 8 years ago when I got this diagnosis. Just
I'm sure it's really cool for them to see too. Sorry, cut you off, but as parents, I'm sure it's a very proud parent moment for them to now see what you're doing, like after obviously what they went through with you, and and now just like where you are today. It's a hopefully a very empowering story to listen to for anyone that's listening.
Yeah, we actually have a video with my dad talking about it on our YouTube channel, and it gets the most hits. Like, people love it.
Oh my God. Okay. It's very emotional. Have to link that. Yeah, I'm sure.
But yeah, I mean, I was on the phone with him on Father's Day, and he's like, like, I never knew you were suicidal. You never told me that until 5 years ago. I never knew. I would have never thought. Right. And it's just like, that made me so sad, because they would have done anything to help me and to support me and be there. And they were, but I hid that. I didn't tell them that I was facing that. And I carried that burden on my own. And yeah, it's interesting, the conversations that we have now.
Yeah.
Only 2 other tips I wanted to share based on that question that you asked. And you're going to be like, yeah, because this is right up your alley. But like, women and food frequency, especially with this condition.
Okay, I was hoping you were going to go there.
Yeah. So the intermittent fasting thing, high conversation, very trendy, great for postmenopausal women. Do not recommend, 0 out of 10 recommend for menstruating women. So stabilizing that food frequency with macronutrient balance. Now, I'm not talking just like eat anything all the time. Very specific nutrition is huge. And that's one of the reasons why I have built that side of my practice out some more. I started just with the health coaching and education, and the more I got into it, it was like, this is very predominantly nutrition based work that we need to be doing.
Absolutely.
And then the last one is like reclaiming some of your energy through boundaries. A pattern that I see with these women is like a lot of people pleasing, a lot of like, I'm the only one that can do it. I have to be there for everyone. I have to do all the things at the highest level, and not understanding how to work with the rhythm of their menstrual cycle, and like be nicer to themselves and set some boundaries and say no more, which is really hard to do, but you can't navigate any chronic health condition or acute health condition by just steamrolling through it. It's just, you're not going to get there. So working with someone who has somatic practices that can help you, and boundary education that can help you understand what that looks like and how to slowly start to do it, non-negotiable.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's so interesting because a lot of times when clients come to me, especially the ones that hire me to be their nutrition coach. So like, the elephant in the room is that most women decide to get coaching because they want to lose weight. They're not happy in their own skin. They feel like crap, etc. And as we get further and further into their journey and we start, like you just said, there's a very large population, I would say, of the women I help. They're people pleasers. And again, like I can totally relate to what you're saying because like that was me. Which so I can just pick up on it so quickly because I just recognize the pattern. But the people pleasing, the little to no boundaries, especially for the moms, I have to do everything myself and I have to be everywhere at once and I have to give to everyone but myself. And in a roundabout way, right? We end up, obviously, I'm like, we need to look at these things and address them. Like, I'm not just here to give you macro numbers to follow because like that isn't going to do you any good long term. And they always are pleasantly surprised that we like end up talking about these things. And then, a couple weeks down the road, months, however long it takes, and they're like, holy crap, like I didn't even realize that what I have been doing for usually a very large part of their life was negatively impacting so many things that had to do with their health and wellness goals, their relationship with food, the gym, like whatever. And when they start to set those boundaries, stop going long periods of time without eating, like all these things, it's like a light bulb goes off and things click and they start to realize that like, holy shit, wow, this, like, I didn't think we were going to talk about this. Like, this is not how I thought my coaching experience was going to go in the best way possible. And it's probably one of my favorite parts of coaching is like when, not that obviously I want everyone going through that, but let's be honest, I feel like a lot of women, this is a very common thing. And it also gets overlooked. Most people have already worked with several coaches before they come to me. And it's like, was never even a momentary blip in conversation. And I'm like, I wholeheartedly agree that like you can't do one without the other. Like you have to look at the full holistic, like 360 approach of all the things because they're just also interconnected. And like you said, you can't just steamroll your way through life and expect to get to where you want to go and be happy when you get there and be able to sustain being there because all this other stuff kind of like slowly catches up to you in not a good way.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's key.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Okay, well, this was great. I feel like I learned so much and hopefully I'm excited for people to listen and just also, like I said, gain some more knowledge about PMDD and if this helps even just one person listening start to bring more, like you said, the first step is really just the awareness. And I want to kind of bring like some final points home for the listeners. Like if they are getting through towards the end of this episode and they're like, okay, like, the wheels are spinning a little bit. What you mentioned a couple of things that I want to point out for them. You have the free resource, the cycle mapping, which we'll list in the show notes. Is that, it sounds like to me that is probably the place to start, right? If they're having some questions and they're wanting to just kind of build that awareness and start to potentially get some answers, is that what you would recommend as like the first step?
Yeah. For collecting that data on yourself, that's where I would recommend starting. Also, come over to our Instagram page. We have so much education, years and years of education and content. Amazing. And you can kind of poke around there and just see, it's very red light, green light. Like you either resonate or you don't. We serve a very specific type of woman who is experiencing a very specific thing. And if you come over and you're not relating, then that's not you. But hey, you probably know someone. You probably work with someone or someone in your family. You're going to notice those patterns. They just disappear for 2 weeks. They can't keep their commitments. They fly off the handle at you. They're, really emotional. And again, not to just pathologize certain things, but you'll start to see if you've experienced someone who is living with this condition and this experience, you'll see it if you spend any amount of time regularly, and you can help advocate for them, and you can help maybe, find a way to breach the conversation with them and help them find the support that they need. Because again, they might not even know that they're going through it. So the Instagram is a great resource. And then the symptom mapping kit is a great place if you are specifically like, I think this sounds like me. I want to figure out what's going on. Use that symptom mapping kit and it will provide a lot of data. I'll also say there's a higher chance of someone experiencing PMDD if they're neurodivergent. As you've probably noticed on this call, I'm standing, I can't stand still. I have a fidget.
Yep. Spotted that.
The neurodivergence is like,
I have a husband who has ADHD. So I totally get it.
Yeah. And I usually schedule these calls during my ovulatory phase, but we had to reschedule. And so now I'm in luteal and your ADHD symptoms become stronger during luteal because estrogen is low and it impacts dopamine. So, I would have been more still if we would have met last week than this week because I'm like having a hard time. But that's part of it. And so, if you are autistic or experiencing ADHD, or someone who's on the spectrum or experiences ADHD, they're going to be more likely to experience the premenstrual disruptions that could look like PMDD or be PMDD as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's such a great point too to just bring up, because this is something that very much so this year starting to connect a lot of these dots that you're describing. And obviously, like, I don't have nearly as much knowledge about this or any really at all, which is why you are here. But just where I'm starting to realize through the check-in process with especially clients that I've had for now probably like a year plus. So like, I really know them in and out, and like I would say very confidently 9 times out of 10, I can tell when my clients are about to get their period. And like something we've been trying to slowly within my scope of practice, obviously weave into their just awareness on a monthly basis is starting to track their cycle a little bit more consistently, right? Be it just like, very simple, the health app, right? For starters, and the iPhone, just to see what's going on. Because like you said, there's like, you have very specific tendencies depending on what week of your cycle you are in. And when it comes to nutrition, eating habits, exercise, like those things become much more exacerbated and heightened during, like you said, these particular phases of the cycle. So at least even just the awareness piece alone, I feel like is so powerful. Because again, I've had clients like just because they've simply started tracking where they're able to talk themselves off of a ledge almost quickly when it comes, you get in your head space about, especially if you're on like a weight loss journey and it's your PMS week, and then it's like nothing's working, everything sucks, listen every negative thing you can say to yourself. And it's like, and then they're like, oh yeah, actually, they look at the calendar and they're like, they start to put 2 and 2 together, and it's like, it's really empowering. I mean, just like the knowledge about even just like, I feel like you said, we don't get educated on this, and just gaining more knowledge about your cycle and understanding the phases that you go through and, very surface level, what's happening with your hormones, just so you can be ready or more ready, right? And it doesn't like blindside you because you go through each and every month and you're like, I have no idea what's going on. Like, it just like, it's a good tool. It's definitely saved me a lot of times. Obviously I don't experience these same degree of symptoms that we're talking about today, but just like, I know when I'm going to be a little extra moody or a little extra sensitive, and now I can relay that to my husband and be like, hey, because like I know it's coming, and like almost to like literally the day and hour, I'm able to predict it now. And that all started with me just when I was trying to get pregnant. I was tracking my cycle, obviously. And then like I just kind of kept doing it. And from doing that, it's like you just learn so much about yourself. So like I could talk for hours and hours about just like awareness, and like that could be a whole podcast episode, but hopefully listeners are going to walk away with, at the very least, just like, let's try and learn more about ourselves and about our body. And then if you are feeling like this is sounding like you and you just want to check out education and learn more about this, like I said, I'll make sure to link everything in the show notes so our listeners can find you, can find your page, can find your free resources, and ultimately utilize you for help and support if they need it. Because I feel like this is such an important and can be a scary thing, like that we definitely want to help as many people as we can learn about and get the help and support that they need. So thank you for being vulnerable with us and sharing your story and teaching us. I learned so much, and I, like I said, hope our listeners also learned so much, and they, you know, Jess is very nice. I don't know her. I literally just like messaged her and was like, hey, I wanted to learn more about this and want to talk to you. And she welcomed me with open arms. So for anyone that's listening, I'm sure her DMs speaking for her, but I would imagine they're always open, and you should probably happily engage in conversation with anyone that has any questions whatsoever. Okay, cool. I feel like we covered everything we talked about. I'm just making sure I don't have any final questions that I missed. Okay, so I'm going to link all of your information in the show notes where people can find you. Let's leave everyone one message, one final message. They're feeling frustrated or dismissed, anything at all. Like, what would you want them to hear? What would you want to tell them?
I think the most important thing to understand, and I know you're going to be resonating with this, Ashley, just already from our conversation, is that it's easy to see the symptoms as an attack, right? Like, I'm so tired, I am in pain, I can't control my moods, right? Like it doesn't feel good. It's uncomfortable. But again, that lack of education, what symptoms really are messages, right? We haven't evolved to the DM capability for your body to be able to DM you and say, your blood sugar is dysregulated, Jess. Like, that's why you're so tired and moody, right? We don't have that. So we do a lot of work with our clients to shift their perception, and the awareness and education helps them do that. But you start to see your symptoms as messages. If you come to me with, oh, my breasts are so swollen and tender, and I'm getting headaches, and I'm having temperature regulation problems, right? I'm thinking of organs and body systems and things that could be driving those specific symptoms. If you're coming to me and you're like, I'm bloated and I have all this digestive distress and my skin is breaking out, I'm thinking of different organs and body systems and areas that need support. And yes, there's some overlap and nuance, of course, but when you start to see the symptoms as messages, you can start to shift the victim mentality of feeling like, I'm being attacked, I don't have any control over this, I feel hopeless, to curiosity. And that shift unlocks everything. Now, you need some support and some help in navigating that, but I think that was one of the most powerful mindset shifts that I've experienced and that we see our clients experiencing, because when there's a dead end, right? When it's like, I have no control, this is just happening to me, this is just how my brain is, the door is closed, there's no options. When you start asking, what is my body trying to tell me? What do these symptoms mean? What does this pattern mean? What is going on here? Lots of answers start coming in and lots of options for you to change it. So it's not hopeless. Your body is trying to speak to you. You just have not learned the language yet, and you absolutely can. And through learning that language, you can, and sounds really offensive to those who are suffering, but the truth is, now looking back from where I stand, I can see PMDD as the initiation into the person that I was meant to be, right? And if I would have told myself that 10 years ago, I would have been like, gag, gross, ick, get away from me,
Yeah.
But that's the truth. My body was trying to communicate things to me, where I needed to set boundaries, what my body needed, what I needed to do, and what I didn't need to do. And as I've navigated all of that, I have become a different person, right? I did not believe that I could be married. or have any healthy relationship based on my past track record.
Yeah.
I did not believe that I would be able to own a home and have my own garden. Dreams that I had for myself, completely impossible because I couldn't work for half of the month. I didn't believe a lot of things. And all of the, minus becoming a mother, we're still working on that. But all of my other dreams have come true and I've proven them to be wrong. I'm married. I live on a 15-acre property with a massive garden. I run a global, virtual premenstrual clinic helping women through this. And I work way too many hours doing it. And, if you looked at me 10 years ago, I literally couldn't get out of bed for 2 weeks every month. And I was self-harming and I was self-sabotaging. So the symptoms aren't an attack. They're a message. You can learn to speak the message, speak the language of your body, and you can actualize those dreams and that person that you know you are and can be. You just need a little bit of help along the way.
Yeah. I love that. That's such a great ending note. And just, if we lost you and you're just coming back to us, is what I always say to my clients is the failures, people are always like, oh, I was bad this weekend, or especially when we're talking about food or lack of going to the gym, right? And I always try to reframe the mindset as these are all learning opportunities, right? And like you said, they're messages, your body is trying to tell you something, something didn't go as planned over the weekend, you ate out, whatever, don't harp and beat yourself up over the situation, but use it as an opportunity to learn, what happened? What could I change in the future? What can I learn from this situation, right? Oh, I didn't eat for 8 hours before I went out to eat. That's why I overate, right? Yeah. That's why I binged at night. Like you said, there's just it's not an attack. It's an opportunity to learn, and it's an opportunity to investigate and ultimately then have the power to get support and make some changes and get the help that you need and own a home with 15 plus acres and a thriving business and all those, whatever the thing is for you that you're wanting. And it all really starts with that. So again, thank you so much for being here. This was an amazing conversation. I can't wait to get it out to my listeners. I'll link all of your details in the show notes, and we'll know where to find you if they want to talk anymore.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley. It's been so fun to chat.
All right. Have a good one.